Hello, everyone. My name is Asher, and welcome to the first episode of the COUHR Research Workshop Series. This series is an online adaptation of the workshops provided in the COUHR Summer Research Program. In this first episode, Ellie, Layla, and myself are going to be taking you through the basics of scientific literature with a focus on analyzing and understanding primary research articles. You may remember back to the days of science fairs where teachers emphasized the idea of the scientific method, which generally involves creating a question, constructing a hypothesis to test that question, generating results, and finally comparing the results to the initial hypothesis. This process is the dominant method that researchers follow when conducting their own research, whether that be primary research or simply a review of the literature. Published research is presented in many different forms, however, they all predominantly fall under the category of scientific papers. Three main types include primary research articles, where original research experiments are presented, review articles, which analyze the current literature on a topic, and case studies, which account for individual cases predominantly in the clinical setting. Although many reasons exist for papers following a specific template, as we will discuss shortly, three main reasons include clarity, consistency, and reproducibility. Following a particular template provides a clear presentation of the work and experiments provided by the researchers so that they can be easily understood by their readers and other researchers who may be interested in their work. This ties in with consistency, as following a consistent template allows for comparison between papers, as well as a structured format that allows readers to find specific information. Lastly, the quality of an experiment and its reported methods can be examined by the experiment's reproducibility. Ideally, a well-done experiment should be able to be repeated by another researcher and yield similar results. This can be achieved through an organized presentation of the original experiment.
Most articles start out with a short abstract, followed by an introduction. Researchers then move on to describe the experimental methods, and a results section follows, which leads to a discussion, and finally, a conclusion completes the article. A works cited section will be provided with all the references, and an optional appendix may follow. In order to explore each section, we will be using this paper as a guided example. This research article has been cited over 2,000 times and is very relevant to everything going on in the world right now. It is very common for the abstract to be the very first part that the reader finds in a research article. The four main components are the background, an overview of methods, an overview of the findings, and a conclusion/interpretation section. As you can see here in this research article, the authors decided to separate the components of the abstract into mini paragraphs for clarity, although it is very common to see all of these components put into one large paragraph. This format is quite useful for explaining how abstracts are organized. As you can see, the background section of the abstract contains very basic information, aimed to introduce the reader of the topic to the article. Next, we can see that they included a very broad definition of what the methods are. For example, they simply described that they depended upon demographic, clinical, and treatment and laboratory data. The following section is used to list the major findings. In this section, the author includes the main points that would be useful for someone interested in reading this research article. Lastly, you can see the interpretation, which outlines the significance of the findings and how they would be useful moving forward. They also included an optional section of information relating to the funding of the study. The introduction serves to communicate relevant background information relating to the research question. It describes the purpose of the experiment and discusses its importance and relevance to the scientific and/or medical community. The next section that usually follows is the methods section. The methods section aims to introduce the reader to the details of the experiment so that it may be replicated to obtain similar results. Usually, depending on the nature of the experiment, there are two types of methods: experimental and statistical methods. With experimental methods, you're usually covering the details of how laboratory experiments were carried out. In this article, the authors address how the PCR reactions were done and which biochemical serum tests were conducted. As for statistical methods, they serve to elaborate on how the results were formed or how the researchers will justify their conclusion. In this study, they used the Mann-Whitney U-test or the chi-square test, among many others, to compare differences when appropriate. As you can see, the results section is one of the most diverse in terms of how it may be presented. One article may contain various forms of experimental results, and we will discuss each form. We can see that the authors chose to divide their results into tables, graphs, and figures. Each one serves a specific purpose and is ideal for a certain type of results. Graphs are very common and diverse in nature. Various types of graphs exist, such as bar charts or scatter plots, making them ideal for both qualitative and quantitative data. For example, the authors of this article compare D-dimer levels and lymphocyte counts in COVID-19 survivors and non-survivors. Next, Tables are commonly used to present quantitative data as they provide clear and organized presentation. The authors use it to compare the prevalence of different treatment options in COVID-19 survivors and non-survivors. Lastly, figures are the most diverse category of result presentation. Life cycle, diagrams, timelines, maps, and other figures are all considered to be useful in presenting relevant data. Used for both qualitative and quantitative data, the authors of this article compare characteristics between COVID-19 survivors and non-survivors.
Now that Layla has discussed the structure of the research article, including the introduction, methods, and results, I will now introduce and describe the discussion, conclusion, and literature cited sections. The discussion section is a key part of the primary research article as it allows you to understand what the authors are trying to convey. It explores both the relevance and significance of the results obtained. This is usually done by restating the results as seen in the example article, which showed that older individuals had elevated levels of certain measured variables. These findings are then compared to the initial hypothesis and eventually interpreted in a broader sense, where in the article it is suggested that older individuals may be at greater risk of death after exposure to the SARS-like coronavirus. The discussion also compares the results of the experiment to the results obtained from similar experiments in the contemporary field. In most cases, experiments are performed multiple times over multiple days to support or refute a certain hypothesis. The results of these experiments performed may bring about different results, and these differences must be discussed in order to either refute or support that hypothesis. The final part of the discussion summarizes the research article in a conclusion section. The conclusion consists of two main parts, and its goal is to summarize the objective and results of the experiment. Firstly, the flaws and shortcomings of the experiment are acknowledged. This is an important section of the discussion as it allows you to further understand the results in the context of the experiment. It allows the reader to recognize external factors that may influence the results obtained. In the study shown, a flaw discussed was that not all tests were done in all patients. This can cause a deviation in the results that would not otherwise be observed. Lastly, the conclusion also discusses the importance of further exploration. A single experiment is rarely enough to create a definitive understanding of a topic. This section allows you to get a sense of direction on where to explore further, whether it is for more research on the topic or an experiment that needs to be planned. In a primary research article, citations will be provided for any information that is not novel, which means any background information or information not obtained from the experiments that are performed in the article. Citations will be encountered in the form of in-text citations and a separated works cited section. In-text citations are found in two main types, numerical and parenthetical. Numerical citations are more commonly found in online journals where the number found in the text corresponds to the number found in the literature cited section. The numerical value given to a citation is based on the numerical order of appearance of the citation. Another form of citation that is commonly used is the parenthetical citation, where the citation includes the last name of the primary article, followed by and others, denoted by et al., and lastly, the year the article was published is included in that citation. The literature cited section consists of full-length citations of each source used. Most often, these sources are relevant primary research articles that are related to the main topic. This section is often numbered based on order of appearance within the article of interest. This section is very useful for finding other sources for further exploration into the topic. The general scheme of the citation is authors first from order of most contributed to least contributed, followed by the title of the article, the journal, the date, the volume, and lastly, the pages. Different journals use different variations of this general scheme, and it is important to refer to their corresponding requirements as needed.
So that wraps up the video. We hope that you guys enjoyed it and hopefully learned something new. Stay tuned to the COUHR YouTube channel for more videos coming soon.